you're going to start seeing results. You're going to see results in yourself, in your own ability to be present with your students, to manage your own stresses, which are a lot as a teacher. There's a lot on your plate. So even just the ability for yourself to manage stress is huge. You're going to notice that your classroom management is going to get easier. You're going to be building amazing connections with your students that may not have been there before. You're going to get an insight into what's going on in your students' minds.
Welcome to Rainbow Skies for New Teachers, where we're all about bite-sized tips and simple strategies for bright and busy new teachers.
If you're in your first few years of your career and want to make the rollercoaster ride of teaching more fun, streamlined, and stress-free, you're in the right place.
We're Ashley and Alicia, the dynamic duo from Rainbow Sky Creations, and we're excited to be your teacher mentors on the go. There are rainbows ahead, my friend.
And together, we're unstoppable. Let's get into today's episode.
Rainbow Sky Creations acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this podcast on, the Dharawal and Whadjuk Noongar people. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures. Welcome to Rainbow Skies for New Teachers. Today, you have the pleasure of listening to our interview with Kailey Lefko. She is the co-founder of Educalm and co-host of the Balanced Educator Podcast. Kailey is super passionate about providing educators with the tools they need to easily share mindfulness and social and emotional learning with their students so that everyone, yourself included, can thrive in a calm and focused environment. In this interview, you will walk away with a better understanding of what co-regulation looks like in the classroom and simple strategies you can try today to help prepare students' brains and bodies for learning. And really, as well, help you prepare to be the best teacher that you can be for the learners in your classroom. So let's dive into today's episode with Kailey. Hello and welcome, Kailey, to Rainbow Skies for New Teachers. It is such a pleasure to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Alicia. I'm happy to be here.
Now, if you don't know, my beautiful listeners, Kailey is also a podcast host for the Balanced Educator. And she is going to share with you some really amazing tips and strategies about, I guess, that amazing word of balance. But Kailey, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, definitely. So my name's Kailey Lefko. I'm a teacher in Manitoba, Canada. And I started off my career in education just so excited to dive in. I've always wanted to be a teacher. It's all I ever wanted to be. And when I got my own classroom, I was just as excited and happy about it as could be. I threw myself into it and ended up giving more in the beginning than I should have because I was moving swiftly into burnout. Now, part of that was because of all the wide range of things you need to learn quickly as a new teacher, which you teach about, which is amazing. But a really big aspect of the challenge for me as a new teacher was that I didn't feel prepared to handle the social and emotional needs of my students. That was something that I felt I didn't learn at all in university. And I was seeing challenges with behavior management in my classroom that I just didn't know how to handle. So I tried lots of different things. And at the same time, as a new teacher, I was feeling very stressed and overwhelmed and realized that I personally needed to figure out something to do to manage my own stress so that I didn't burnout. So I started trying yoga and really enjoyed that practice. But what I loved the most about it wasn't just the physical aspect of it. It was actually the mindfulness aspect of it, is where I was learning to notice how my body felt, those sensations, and how that went along with what I was thinking in my mind. The thoughts that I were having were impacting how I was feeling. So I was starting to make this connection and noticing that this mindfulness practice was helping me to be a better teacher in the classroom. I was learning strategies for managing my own emotions, which meant that I now had some tools to help my students manage their emotions. So I started experimenting with my own mindfulness practice, diving really deep into learning all about mindfulness, practicing a ton, learning from great teachers, researching it, learning how it could support kids and students, the kids that I was working with. And then I started teaching mindfulness in my classroom. And I noticed amazing transformations in my students, in my classroom culture, in just the feel of what it was like to be in my classroom. And these huge transformations were just like, I couldn't believe it. I had tried so many different behavior management strategies that never seemed to work. And this is one thing that seemed to be getting to the root of the problem, which is that it wasn't that my students didn't want to follow the instructions or manage their behaviors. It's that they didn't know how. They didn't have the tools to manage these emotions that they were having, to stay focused even when there were challenging things going on in their lives, or to focus even when there were big emotions in their body or distractions in the classroom. So I was experimenting with these different types of mindfulness practices in my classroom. Some totally flopped and didn't work. Some were great. And over the course of a couple of years with all this experimenting, I found a system that really worked in my classroom. I had my colleagues asking, like, what are you doing in your classroom? Your students have completely transformed. What's your secret? And then I would tell them, oh, it's so easy. I just do 5 minutes of mindfulness and a morning meeting in the morning. And it makes such a difference. And then I would just see blank stares on their face and like, oh, well, that isn't for me. I don't know how to do that. I don't feel confident doing that. So as I was experimenting like this in my classroom, my best friend and colleague, also teacher, Josiane, was doing the same sort of experimenting in her classroom. We were chatting about what was working, what wasn't, and eventually came to this system that worked for both of us, me in high school and her in elementary school. And we realized that teachers were looking for what we were doing in our classroom, but didn't feel confident doing it themselves, didn't want to do the hours and hours of training that we had done. So we thought, why not create a program that does it for the teachers so they can learn alongside their students, and creates a routine in the classroom where everyone is co-regulating together, managing their emotions, learning tools for managing their emotions, practicing those tools in small but repetitive increments in a systematic way, and that the teacher could learn alongside their students. So that's how we created EduCalm. That is our program that helps teachers and students practice social emotional learning in their classroom daily in a really realistic way for real life classroom. And then, we started the Balanced Educator Podcast as well to chat about all things social emotional learning and finding that elusive balance as a teacher.
Yes. The scale, it tips.
Yeah.
I love what you're doing in the teacher space, and it is so needed. And I think you hit on a really important point there, that it's really hard to co-regulate students or a student when you yourself don't feel like you're able to even self-regulate yourself. That's such an important part of when we're looking at teachers and their career, that you're finding those outlets or those things that help you self-regulate so that you can step up. And when you need to do that in the classroom, you're able to co-regulate and support students through those feelings, those, I guess, big emotions, whatever it might be that they're having troubles with, that they're finding it sticking and not allowing them to become the most effective and efficient learner that they could be. So EduCalm, amazing. And you must have all these amazing tools. And I guess that's what we would love to know is, how does co-regulation or the tools that you've put in place differ to traditional classroom management models? And how does it foster that positive learning environment?
Yeah. So I kind of touched on this without realizing it when I was telling my story, but it's that traditional models of behavior management often offer rewards or punishments for students not following the rules of the classroom or the expectations of the classroom. And that's kind of working on the pretense of, well, they are able to follow the instructions, but choose not to. Now, that isn't always the case, and often it isn't. Now, what I would say is that all students want to succeed and do well in the classroom and be successful in following the classroom routines and rules, but they might not have the actual skills that they need to be able to do it. So when we are focusing, instead of the behavior, we're focusing on creating the skills and building the skills to be able to have that behavior, then we're getting to the root of the challenge of classroom behavior. So if we say, okay, managing emotions, managing frustrations, managing my focus and attention, those are skills that need to be learned. Well, then we stop making our students like villains and we think of ourselves as teachers. Hey, I have a skill to teach. How are we going to teach focus? How are we going to teach following instruction? How are we going to teach managing big emotions? What skills do they need to have success? So that's where co-regulation is amazing, because the reality is us as human beings, we are emotional beings. So our emotions aren't just this like airy fairy like thing. They are biological processes in our bodies. They are hormones and reactions that are moving in our bodies that are causing a physical reaction. So here's an example. I'm a teacher. I'm feeling stressed in the morning. I wake up thinking of the 10 million things on my to-do list and how I'll never have the chance to get it all done. So I walk into the classroom and I'm rushing from one place to the other to, I have to send off this one email, and I can't forget to make these copies, and I need to do this, and I need to talk to that one student. I am personally in a physical state of stress. My heart rate is running high. My blood pressure is higher. My students' brains are wired to notice my emotional state. They are experts at noticing my emotions and other people's emotions, as am I, as are all humans. We are wired to notice other people's emotions so that we can act in accordance to that. So my students who look to me as a leader come in, they see me rushing around the classroom, acting busy. What's going on in their mind now? They're probably thinking, what's going on with Mrs. Lefko? Is she okay? Is there something? Is there a test today that I'm forgetting about? Is that why she's stressed out? What? And they're thinking like, what's going on with her? And then they're starting to feel those same physical reactions of stress happening in their body. So their heart rate is speeding up. Their brain is getting into a hyper-focused state where they're focused on problems. They're looking for issues. Their blood pressure is rising. Their tummy might be feeling upset because their digestion is altered. So there's just a physical cascade of things that are happening in their bodies when they feel stressed. Now, this is not an optimal state to be in for learning. In fact, the learning centers of our brain are kind of like shutting down when we're in a stressed out state. Now, I want to stop you right now. Okay, teacher, it is not your fault that students feel stressed or that you're stressed. I'm not saying it's your fault. What I'm saying is this is the reality. We teachers have a lot on our shoulders, and we have 20 plus students coming into our classrooms, coming from different home situations. They might have had a stressful morning. So if we can all come into the classroom and say, hey, our mind and body isn't ready for learning yet, but let's use our biology to our advantage and regulate together as a group, because in fact, regulating our emotions together as a group is more effective than trying to do it solo. So if we can do it as a group, it's going to be more powerful. And then we're all going to be able to get our minds and bodies into a state where we're calm, focused, ready to learn and teach effectively. Plus, it's building this sense of connection, this showing our students that we care about how they're feeling, about how they're doing, that we're taking 5 minutes out of our busy day to just
do some
breathe
breath work
together as a group. Yeah. Let's take a big, deep breath together, and showing them that first and foremost, we care about how you're feeling. We care about teaching you the skills that you need to be ready for this exciting learning thing.
Yes.
So we're taking an approach of giving our students the skills that they need to be successful learners, rather than punishing them or rewarding them for already having had those skills.
Yeah. And I could imagine that element of coming in and being like, we're in this together. I think there's also that element of authenticity when you're like, whoa, it's been a morning. Let's get into the zone because we've got some really good stuff to get through. And what would be on the top of your go-to list with a strategy that our amazing teachers who are listening to could use or try in the classroom? What's a really easy one?
The one that I recommend right away, because it's so easy and super effective, is 5-finger breathing. So we'll try it out together. If you're driving or something like that, you can still do this. Just maybe keep your hands on the steering wheel and imagine what we're going through here. So just place one hand in front of you. And with the index finger of your other hand, you're going to trace your open hand while we take deep, slow breaths. So inhale as you trace up to the tip of your thumb. Exhale as you trace down the other side. Inhale, trace up your index finger. Exhale down the other side. Inhale up your middle finger. Exhale down the other side. Inhale. Exhale down the other side. Last one, inhale up your pinky finger. Exhale down the other side. Just pause and notice how you feel.
A lot better.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? Just some deep breathing. It takes less than a minute, and already you're regulating your nervous system and you're preparing your brain and body for learning. So this is one that I recommend starting out. A lot of times when teachers are starting out with this idea of co-regulating or practicing mindfulness in the classroom or breathing strategies, it like feels like this big thing that you have to do, that you have to make a big deal out of it. You don't. You can just say, hey guys, follow me. Like it's as simple as that. Just jump right into it. You don't need to give any explanation or anything. Just do it and see what happens. Ask them how they felt afterwards. Then I would suggest repeating this 5-finger breathing every day for at least a week at the exact same time. So maybe that's first thing in the morning as part of your morning routine. Maybe it's right before, if you do like circle time or morning meeting or something like that, maybe you start with the 5-finger breathing. I had a group of students that had so much energy in the mornings that morning was just chaos. So we would do 5-finger breathing in line outside when I went to get them in the morning before we even came into the building. And it just became part of our routine. It was like, all right, good morning, everyone. 5-finger breathing. All right, let's go inside. And then don't need to give much explanation. And eventually you can start asking your students, what did you notice when we did that? And you'll have students that say, oh, I feel more calm, or, oh, that was nice, or, oh, that helped me to like feel more focused. And then you can start using that during times where you feel that you have kind of lost the focus in the classroom and want to return back to a state of calm. You can say, hey, I'm noticing that there's lots of energy right now. We're having a hard time focusing. Let's try 5-finger breathing, see if that helps. And treat it like an experiment. Like, let's try this. What do you think? Should we do it again? Should we do different breathing strategies like this? And it's so simple. You don't need any resources. You just need your hand.
Yes. And sometimes that is the hardest part. It's the how to start part. It's what do I do? But I think you've summed it up really beautifully there. Of you've got everything you need. You've got your hand, you've got your breathing, you've got your voice to be able to communicate that instruction. And I guess it's like anything where you're introducing to the classroom, you kind of build it up in layers and you start to add and build upon it. But also you keep that element of that repetition and that consistency. So I guess like anything, they're like, stick it up for 5 days, push it out to 10 days, and then just see how it evolves. And I'm sure you would find in your experiences that with certain classes, it's evolved differently to what you've moved on to with different co-regulation strategies.
Totally. Yeah. Like with some classes, we just had a lot of physical energy and needed to like move our bodies. So we would do a lot of mindful movement, a lot of stretching, a lot of like standing up at our spot and doing big, what I call sun breathing, which is just standing up. And as you inhale, you reach your arms up, stretch up. And then as you exhale, you bring your arms back down, kind of like you're tracing the sun. Sometimes we would just like jump and shake our bodies and make silly sounds. And then other groups were very quiet and really preferred doing just like a guided mindfulness practice where there was an audio guiding them through for 5 minutes, 2 to 5 minutes. And I had some groups that I had a grade 12 class that we would do outdoor time. So once a week, it was usually on Friday, we would start the class by going for a 5-minute walk outside around the track. So they would come into class, drop their stuff, put on their jackets. We'd go outside, do our walk, come back in. And it was like, okay, we're ready to learn now. And so, yeah, each group is different. And there's so many strategies that you can use. And really, you want to choose strategies that you enjoy doing.
Yeah.
Something that you like what helps you to feel calm? What helps you to get the jitters out when you're feeling jittery? What helps you to get the sillies out when you're feeling silly or refocus? And you can start there, but you can also have ready to use resources that teach you the skills alongside your students if you don't feel confident teaching it yourself or leading it yourself. So we've really created our program EduCalm to be completely like pretty much hands off for the teacher. You log in, you press play, and you're following along with your students. And then within our library of mindfulness practices, guided audios and videos, we have a wide variety of different types of practices that allow you to kind of go, oh yeah, I have this one class that loves mindful movement. So there's lots of mindful movement videos that you can use. I have one class that really loves nature. Okay, we can use the nature theme. Or I have a class that really needs to work on the growth mindset. Okay, we can really focus on the growth mindset theme. So yeah, you can start right away with just your hand and your own body, or if you prefer to have resources that are ready for you, we've got that for you.
That is so amazing and so needed. Did you find that with what happened with the pandemic, did you find there was a shift in the increase in need for social and emotional support for students?
Totally. When I was in the classroom, my high schoolers, they loved the mindfulness practice. I was using Educom in my classroom. I use my own program in my own classroom, of course. And just the feedback that I got from them was so positive that they really loved coming to my class because they knew it was going to be starting with 5 minutes of mindfulness practice, 5 minutes of Educom. They wished that all classrooms were doing it. They wanted to continue doing it the following years. They would ask me, can you please tell my teacher for next year that we need to do this? And once they graduated out of my classroom, they would say, I just wish I could come back and do Educom. So it was definitely needed during that time. And life is hard for kids, for adults. And it's great to have tools that help us ride those waves of the ups and downs and to know that our emotions are just our biology. There's nothing wrong with our emotions. There's nothing wrong with having a hard time sitting still some days or focusing some days. That's just the ebb and flow of our humanness. So if we can have the time that we know every day, we get this little 5-minute window where we get to just be in our own little bubble and check in with ourselves, notice how our body's feeling, learn some strategies that help us cope with challenging emotions, and we can look forward to that every day. That's just great. It's great as a teacher. It's great as a student. I, as a teacher teaching high school, I would teach several different classes a day. And I started every class period with Educom. So I got to do mindfulness 3, 4, 5 times a day sometimes. It was great. It really helped me to be my best teacher self and my students to be their best student selves.
You must have been just that Zen teacher walking around going, what is that magic that she has? Tell us your secret. You're like, I've got it. I've got the secret. The reason I mentioned, I guess, like the discussion of that pandemic, I feel like since everything has happened, I feel like these discussions on co-regulation, on social and emotional well-being has come really to the forefront. And we've kind of had this huge wake-up call to say, oh my gosh, we need this. Like you said, it's like our biology, our physiology, we need this to be able to function at an optimal state. I guess one of the questions might be is, what are some common challenges teachers might encounter when trying to implement co-regulation techniques, and how can they effectively overcome these? I just think of you as a high school teacher. I'm like, you must have come across some challenges.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the first challenge I would say is setting up your mindset as a teacher. So I think a lot of times teachers feel that they need to, because this isn't like your regular curriculum, that you need to have it all figured out before you try it. I made so many mistakes in the beginning, and that's what allowed me to learn. And that's what learning should be. So if we go into it as a teacher thinking that we have to have it all figured out, chances are, even if you think you have it all figured out, you don't, because how it goes in your head is always different than how it goes in practice. So thinking that you have to have it all figured out is like the first challenge. And so you can just drop that. You don't need to have it all figured out. We learn through practice and trial and error. The next challenge is a lot of teachers feel that they don't have enough time in the classroom to add in another thing. Like, I already have so many academics to manage and get through. How do I find time for social emotional learning? How do I find time to co-regulate? And then really that's just a mindset shift too, because if you think of how much time you waste on classroom management, managing behaviors, if you could be proactive instead. So rather than wasting time getting mad at your students, you can invest time into giving them the skills they need to manage their emotions independently, then you're actually gaining back time. And so with users of our program, the Educom program, when we were piloting the program, we had this one survey question that said, how does using Educom in the classroom impact the time you have to teach academics? And 100% of the teachers said that it gave them more time for academics. So this idea of I don't have time because of the academics, I like to think of it as a slingshot. You're holding a slingshot, your students are the rock you're trying to sling. And if you say, I don't have time to pull the slingshot back, I'm just going to kind of let it go. That doesn't even make sense. Take the time to pull it back and then you can launch them so much further. Educom users say that they get through way more academics by the end of the year because they're teaching their students these skills that they need to be successful learners. So yeah, that's another hurdle. And then the third one is once you get started, you're going to have students that push back. Now, for some reason, when we're teaching co-regulation strategies in the classroom, we feel more like self-conscious about pushback. We think, oh, if they don't love it, they don't like it, they're not interested in it, maybe I shouldn't be doing it in the classroom. Because it isn't one of those academic subjects that you have to teach. But you always have kids in the classroom that don't love everything that you do. And you're like, well, we're doing it anyway. This is something that you need to learn. We're going to work through it. And how can I support you through this thing that you're finding challenging? If you don't like math, I don't just stop teaching you math. I figure out ways to make math fun or to support you through your math journey. The same is true with these strategies. Is if you have some kids that don't really want to participate, or they're giggling or they're laughing, it feels a little disheartening at first, but I can tell you so many stories every single year, every single group that I did daily mindfulness practices with using Educom. Every year I had specific students that I was like, I'm not getting through to them. Yep. This kid is not getting it. And I swear to you, every single year, it was that one kid that I thought wasn't being impacted by it that came to me personally, or their parent came to me to tell me how much a difference this practice had made in their lives. It gives me goosebumps just thinking about it because it's always been the student, that one that I think I'm not getting through to, that at the end of the year comes to me and tells me that it's been transformative for them. So even if it doesn't look like they're participating and they're like giggling or laughing or seem like they're not following along, they're soaking it in. They're learning the strategies. They might be taking it home and sharing it with their parents, with their siblings. They might be practicing before they go to bed at night if they're having a hard time falling asleep. They might be doing these strategies before a big game or a big performance or something important in their lives. So the power in doing this as a class is that co-regulation aspect. So even if there's a couple kids in the class that don't seem to be really following along or getting it, I'm saying in air quotes.
Yes.
The power of the whole classroom kind of bringing that energy down, getting all of their bodies and brains in a state that's more ready for teaching and learning. It's affecting even the ones that don't seem to be participating, right? If 20 kids are getting calmer and 5 don't seem to be, those 5 are going to be impacted by the 20.
Absolutely. Their peers hold more status than you do. So if you've got 80% of the class participating, those other peers are going to see, oh, hang on a second, there's something in this. And I think your statistics speak for itself in terms of your members who have Educom, that if 100% are saying this has impacted their learners in their classroom positively, I think those challenges that you said, mindset and time, you can work through that. You stepping in and doing it is going to start to shift your mindset because your physiological being is going to be like, I'm noticing the impact. And time, like what is 5 minutes? Like 5 minutes for peace of mind, 5 minutes for focused learners, 5 minutes for you to build connection. I think that's a really amazing return.
Yeah, totally. And with my high school students, I always say, you can participate or not. This is 5 minutes for you to do nothing.
Yeah.
And that helped me get a lot of buy-in. I would say distractions away. I'm turning on Educom. Here's 5 minutes for you to do nothing. And it was like, they got a 5-minute break from their phones. They got a 5-minute break from teachers telling them what to do. They got a 5-minute break from the gossip. They got a 5-minute break from whatever was happening. They just got to rest for 5 minutes before diving into math.
Absolutely. And what do they say? When you're focusing on breathing in and breathing out, your brain cannot be thinking about something else. Your brain can only be thinking about the in-breath and the out-breath. So you're giving full permission So stop worrying about the stresses of the world. So in that ending, like that question there, how can teachers gauge the effectiveness of their co-regulation effects? What have you seen to be like, oh, this is the ticket with this class?
Yeah. So, like, to gauge the effectiveness, I think one thing that's super important is making sure that you are making it a routine for at least a month. So, again, these are skills that we're teaching. They're not going to learn it overnight. We wouldn't try teaching our students how to read on one day and then the next day be like, oh, they're not reading yet. They don't get it. Not worth trying. You need to keep practicing until they get it, right? So sticking to this as a routine, as a daily practice that you do at the same time every day, you're going to start seeing results. You're going to see results in yourself, in your own ability to be present with your students, to manage your own stresses, which are a lot as a teacher. There's a lot on your plate. So even just the ability for yourself to manage stress is huge. You're going to notice that your classroom management is going to get easier. You're going to be building amazing connections with your students that may not have been there before. You're going to get an insight into what's going on in your students' minds. I always recommend to do a little check-in with your students at the end of the practice. So as a high school teacher, we would listen to the EduCom audio, and then I would do attendance. And just as I was going through attendance, I'd be like, hey, Joey, what did you notice today? And then he would say, oh, I feel calmer now. Okay, thank you. Sarah, hi, what did you notice today? Oh, it was really hard for me to focus today. Yeah, okay, thanks for sharing. Next. And we would just move on, and they would tell me how it went, and I gave no positive or negative reaction to whatever they shared. It would be like, okay, thank you for sharing. So they understood that it's okay to have hard days. It's okay if it goes well. It's okay if it's challenging. And it would give me a little bit of insight in like what's going on in their minds and how are they feeling today. And it was like 1 second check-in with each of my students that allowed me to be a better teacher for them. So if you stick to this for couple weeks, a month, you're gonna notice differences.
That's amazing. I think as well, us, no spring chickens over here. And sometimes it can be that we weren't used to doing this as kids or in the classroom. So I think going back to that mindset shift is that if you're willing to give it a try, the kids are going to see you willing to give it a try. And if anything, you're setting them up for life. You're setting them up to cope with challenges, to be able to sense in their bodies when things aren't feeling right. And they've got the toolkit to be able to do that when they start to branch out into the workforce or create new relationships and friendships and so forth. It's just a heartfelt big thank you, Kailey, for what you're doing and contributing to teachers and students out there, because it's so powerful and it's so needed and so simple for us to get started. I love that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm obviously very passionate about sharing this because it's been so transformative for me and so many of my students and so many of the EduCom users. We love hearing stories from our EduCom users of the amazing impact that this practice has in their classrooms and on their students. It's far-reaching, which is really exciting.
Oh, absolutely. Now, if our listeners wanted to connect with you, how can they reach out?
Yeah, the best place is to start at our website, educalm.com. That's EduCalme.com. And there you'll find us on social media and our podcast, the Balanced Educator Podcast, and of course, our program EduCalm, which you can start for free. So if you go there, sign up, and you're going to get the first unit of our program for free forever, never expires. And then if you want lessons for more content than having enough for every day of the full school year. So every day you can get into your classroom, just open the website, just have to press play and it's ready to go. You're learning alongside your students. Then you can sign up for a membership to EduCalm, but it's all at our website, educalm.com.
Fabulous. I'll link that all in the show notes. And it sounds like a bit of a no-brainer not to go and do it. So Kailey, thank you so much for sharing your passion for mindfulness and social and emotional well-being. It's been an absolute delight to have you today.
Thank you so much for having me, Alicia.
I loved that chat with Kailey. Anything that involves talking about the social and emotional well-being of the learners in the classroom just kind of gives me goosebumps because I feel like it is such an important skill we need to be equipping our learners with. So if you've walked away from that episode saying, yes, I have time to start co-regulating with my students, make sure you jump onto EduCalm and go and download your free trial. I think you will benefit from it immensely. You'd be doing a disservice to yourself if you didn't give yourself those 5 minutes in the day And even if you have to do it 3 times in the day, where you might be doing it for up to 8 to 12 minutes in a day, I can guarantee your students are going to benefit from you bringing in that breath work, that mindfulness, and co-regulating together. You're going to actually feel it in your body. So I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. If you know a teacher who would benefit from learning more about co-regulating in the classroom and its effectiveness, share this podcast with them. Until next time, there are rainbows ahead, my friend, and together we're unstoppable.